I have many hobbies in my life. Video gaming comes to mind, but also reading, consuming visual media, television, YouTube, whatever that may be, playing Dungeons and Dragons, going on adventures with friends in real life, all sorts of things. But a pretty significant through line in almost all of them is the presence of a story. Either the creation, telling, or experiencing, all of which is some part of the storytelling process. So, I feel it's fair to say that I generally know what I'm talking about in the ballpark of storytelling. I am of the firm belief that stories make the character, rather than the other way around, although it's a bit of both. Which is to say that characters are informed by the world they're living in and by the events they experience. However, I believe there is one genre where the story more so happens around, I suppose they're still characters, but are they really? And that would be something like this. Anyone familiar with Junji Ito's works should recognize at least some of the images flashing by. A wonderful horror author and a one that I'm a big fan of. But I think it is not unreasonable to say that you shouldn't want to experience any of these stories, not from a first-person standpoint. Any of these anthology-style short horror sequences that are really just there to tell an interesting monster concept or some sort of analogy to the real world and a greater horror, whether that's capitalism, ecological devastation, whatever have you. And while those can be very interesting stories from a viewing perspective, you shouldn't want to participate in them. And I can even hear an argument for wanting to be in a story like, I don't know, Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street. And I can see the appeal in being a final girl. And while I don't know if everyone should want to be in it under the thoughts that you would be a final girl, anyone can be a final girl if you're willing to slay hard enough. However, these stories are less of the final girl narrative about the character type horror stories and more just something terrible happens, the terribleness happens. And I would say there's a pretty significant amount of them by percentage, where the characters involved really don't stand a chance. Or even in some situations, there's not a chance to stand. So, today, we're gonna talk about how to avoid finding yourself in something of this variety. So, welcome to Benching a Mrs. Teacher. How to set up your life with interesting narrative potential so that you don't end up in a supernatural horror setting with no chance of fighting back. Now, what do I mean by that title? Well, it's very simple. Lots of, and again, not all, but lots of the characters in these sort of analog style horror, in these anthology style horror stories have very little characterization. And that's fine, because the story's not about them. But if you want to not become one of them, we need to give you some story potentials. So, I'm going to list off some qualities, and if you find yourself exhibiting these qualities, I urge you to take some sort of action to try and stop exhibiting them, so that it increases the odds of you ending up as the chosen one in a fantasy novel, or the comedy sidekick in a rom-com. Any genre, really. Any genre that's not this one. Step number 1. Multiple identifiable traits. Let's do a little activity right now, you and me together. I'd like you to take a moment, pause the video if you need to, and think about yourself from the third person. If you were to describe yourself, how would you? If you said less than 3 words, red flag. Now, I don't care what you said to describe yourself. That's for you. You could be brave, cowardly, heroic, intelligent, interested in music, lover of food, be it consuming or creating. Unimportant. What is important is that it's not just one thing. Because as soon as you reduce yourself to one character trait, you become something to be used in a story. To have that trait turned on its head by whatever the monster of the week is. For instance, if you only said that you really love making food, you set yourself up to be attacked by tomato demons the next time you go to the store. If you said bravery for yourself, then you've set yourself up, that's the easiest one, for the one thing that scares you senseless, whatever that is, to appear, get really big or really fast or otherwise undefeatable, terrorize you for a bit, and eventually bring you to an end. The way to avoid that is to have multiple character traits, multiple things that you can point to quickly to identify yourself. Are you, for instance, the captain of the swim team at your personal high school? Consider also starting to collect and repair outdated cars, maybe. Or if you play a lot of Pokemon and are singularly focused on playing Pokemon games, maybe it's time to try writing a book. I don't know. Or brewing coffee. The specific thing is not what's important. What is important is varied interests and varied ways of expression. Because then you have more interesting potential and it's harder to narrow down one thing for a monster to destroy you with. Point number 2. Variable costume. This one's a bit lower stakes and much easier to get around, but if you are very identifiable by the things you wear, the accessories you choose to use, a very particular book you carry around, or notebook, or skateboard, anything. Again, the genre's not important. What is important is if you have one very identifiable thing, you're setting up for a very identifiable shot of that particular thing covered in blood a bit away from the body for you to be discovered, or to show dramatically that you didn't make it out of the shed in time, or you didn't make it back to the car before the werewolf got you, whatever it is. For instance, this is a necklace that I got a while ago. I got a matching set. This one has an L on it, and the other one has a J. It's for me and my partner, and I love the shit out of it. But I don't wear it all the time. Partially because if I did wear it all the time, then that would be my identifiable thing. That if I were running from, say, the vampire that's trying to get me, it might seem like I had just made it out, and then very dramatically the camera could cut to a parallel shot and you see just the necklace, slightly bloody with the chain broken, flying away with my body noticeably not going with it. Shots like that, or panels like that, if we're going back to the manga, are very, very easy to put the end to someone's life. And so the less we can make that possible, the better. Step number 3. A near and finite end to suffering. What do I mean, you ask? Well, that's very simple. Old man Jenkins, he's a janitor. He's been at the school for 30 years. He's retiring at the end of the week. If I say that, everyone and your mother can tell me that what's going to happen before the end of that week? Old man Jenkins, the janitor, is dead. My man is dead, and he is not getting out of this story alive. This does not have to be a retirement, although you do see that quite a bit. Although this trope does sort of extend to action movies as well, which you also really don't want to be a part of unless you're, I don't know, a Navy SEAL or very well prepared. But when there is a very clear and specific and very close goal that will bring an end to a long-standing pain, finally getting enough to move out of an abusive household maybe, or graduating from college when you have a particularly mean and vindictive teacher, anything like that. As soon as there is a finite date coming up, or thing you need to get done, or last hurdle, and you are vocally and clearly very excited about it, God forbid if you say it out loud to a coworker or a fellow student or anything like that, your goose is cooked. And we're looking to avoid cooked geese here. You're allowed to be excited about things. That's not the problem. The problem is when there's a very clear narrative chopping away to be done. A very clear... An outstretched hand is a hand easily cut off, is the point that I'm making. Step number 4. A spreading of self-worth. Countless times, especially in these sort of anthology horror things, you find a bonded pair. 2 characters that are effectively conjoined at the hip. All of their self-worth is in each other. that is another huge red flag for getting your ass absolutely destroyed, and not in a hot way, in these types of stories. If everything I am is my relation to this one person, that is serving up on a platter, take one of them out of the equation and watch the other person suffer. I'm sorry, Creamtown. And the answer to this is difficult, more so than the others, but very much worth doing. Make sure you're placing worth not in one other person. And that looks two different ways. That looks like having a group of friends beyond just one person to solely rely on. And that can be a friendship with a parent, or a sibling, or a friend from school, friend from work, anything. Doesn't specifically matter, as long as there's at least two separate anchor points. But also, taking some stock in yourself, knowing that at the end of the day, you are a person worthy of love and respect. And even if this one person were to have to be out of your life for any amount of time, be it a week, be it a month, be it death, God forbid, you would eventually be okay. That is not to say that people leaving our lives for any amount of time and any amount of permanency is not worthy of grief. Grieving is very important, especially if you find yourself in one of these stories. But while grief is healthy and important for the process of losing someone, if you find yourself in a situation where if you lost someone, that would just completely throw you to the wolves and you'd become a shamble, a shell of your former self, we need to start taking some steps to get away from that, or else the Kappa is gonna come and get you, or get your friend, and then make you an easy target later on. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We don't want this guy to get any food. And finally, the biggest, most important piece of not being a Mrs. Teacher, a willingness to expand your mind, a willingness to change your ideas. I could name so very many characters that are staunchly opposed to their worldview being changed, and as such, they are the first to go. I'm sure if you take a moment to think about it, you can come up with a character like this. Think of typically the dad in any of the Paranormal Activity movies. Someone who is so attached to, no, monsters don't exist. No, ghosts aren't real. No, the thing that I believe is the thing that is true. This person that I killed cannot be back from the dead. This child cannot possibly be a threat. They're a child. As soon as you have taken a hard and firm stance about the way that the world is, and even some pretty damning evidence is not enough to shake your stance on it, you are the first casualty. Unquestionably. There may be a dog or a raccoon that gets got before you to show the threat to the audience first, but as soon as a character is gone, you are the character that is gone. If you are the one who you tee it up so easily because you're standing dramatically at the top of the stairs or the door to the house or somewhere significant that's related to the threat and proudly declare, no, that isn't true. Ghosts aren't real. You say something like that out loud and you're just done. I don't know what to tell you. If you're gonna tee it up like that, really the greater point is avoid teeing up a death for yourself through dialogue. Never say something that is so clearly going to be cut off with you being the first to go. Anything like, I'm gonna make it. That's not real. This can't be happening. That sort of tropey, like, obviously, if you set up, it's tennis. It's just tennis. If you serve it, they're going to hit it back. Don't serve it for them. Get the fuck out of there and find a different story to be a part of. And there we go. Those are the 5 Wobblehawk tips for how to avoid ending up in an anthology horror story, or anything of that nature. At least setting yourself up to, narratively, it would be satisfying if you were to survive. Therefore, giving you a fantastic edge against whatever supernatural horror you may be facing. Did you have fun with this video? I did. This title came to me in a dream. After I lived through 5 to 7 actual horror anthologies, it was really well structured, weirdly enough. There was, I won't get into it, but this concept came to me in a dream, and I thought it might be interesting to talk about stories and their tropes in that way. If you made it this far, did you have a good time? Would you want to see more of something like this? A deep delve into story and narrative tropes and how to avoid them? Or how to lean into them if it's a trope for something you would want to be a part of. If so, leave a comment. Tell me what you would want me to talk about next. Check out the Patreon, because that's super cool. There will probably be something from this video, and if there's not, there's definitely a bunch of stuff from other videos up there that's really good. Thanks to our patrons. These are them at the time of recording this. And also remember, once we get to 10 tier 1 patrons worth of patrons, our good buddy D-Dog will be reading My Immortal, the fanfiction, for the first time ever on the Patreon. So get excited for that. Here's the progress bar on that. If you don't have the money or don't want to spend the money on me, and trust me, I believe it, go check out the Discord where we do cool stuff and hang out with fun people. And it is very much free. Let me know if you liked this and if you want to see more, and tell me how your day was. Just something for me to respond to, because I like talking to you guys. See ya!